can't speak of worship without speaking of his presence. So what are you expecting to hear? Voices that tingle the sensation of your ears and command your hands towards the applause that should sound? I know his word says, where 2 or 3 are gathered, he is there in their midst. But I'm unusual about this moment. It's no more service as usual. It's no more church as usual. I've recognized that his presence is in our midst. But his presence is beyond the geographical location of a church. It is in the mental awakening of consciousness of his presence within you. And worship is known in the gathering of people of the same faith. For his word says, we are of the New Testament and covenant. We have become the temple. So why do you worship? What is your reason and motivation for worship? Because worship is not in the brilliant computation of sound from the instrument. Worship is not in the vocal clarity of the worship leader. Worship is not in the sensational rhythms and blues vibe from the keyboard. Worship is not even in the perfect outfit of the choir. Worship is not in the award-winning voices of the backup singer. It's the mental consciousness that resurrects your inner man to recognize his presence, his experience. Because in worship, he flows my heart like an ocean of peace. In worship, he calms my turbulent and troubled life. In worship, he's breaking every chain that has held me bound to live life according to original design. In worship, he's answering the very question that deafens my curiosity. In worship, he's reassuring me about my pathway when the direction of purpose and destiny becomes unshown clear. Worship. I know there were days when you asked yourself, your flesh tells you you are inadequate, you are guilty, your makeup is imperfection, your limitation. Should you raise your hand in worship? But let me remind you of his words that said, come boldly to the throne of grace. For your sake and my sake, 2,000 years ago, the curtain of demarcation was torn from top to bottom. So he says, lay aside every filthiness, your garment of filthiness. Come boldly to the throne of grace and obtain mercy. I know there were days when your faith fainted and your patience whirled in pains. I know there were days when anxiety drowned you and circumstances overturned you like a tsunami, and you are right to have 1,001 reasons not to worship. But I still dare you to worship. To give worship to him that stretches the earth like a curtain. To give worship to him that clothed himself in glory. To give worship to him that laid the foundation of the earth with words and created season just by thought. I dare you to see